Hey guys, how's it going? It's me again, and I'm back for another video. And today I have a couple of new elements in my little YouTube experiment. One of them is my tripod, which is right here, and which is very cool. It's one of these little gorilla pod type of tripods, and trying it for the first time. And the other thing I'm doing is I've bookmarked the book that I want to review this time, which is something I wasn't planning on doing, but I find that there are so many interesting quotes and sections here. I want to make sure that I don't miss any of them. And the book that we're going to be reviewing today is a book that is very, very close to my heart. It's called Mastery: The Keys to Success and Long-Term Fulfillment by George Leonard, the author of The Way of Aikido. It's a really small book, actually. It's like, I don't know, 170 pages and so. And but it's just packed with really interesting knowledge and insights of someone who picked up the discipline of Aikido fairly late in his life by modern standards, as in he didn't start at 8 years of age or anything of the kind, and who nevertheless managed to become very accomplished. Now, the book sort of navigates between the topic of mastery and how to achieve it, but it makes a huge point about why you want to pursue mastery in the first place, and it almost becomes secondary whether you achieve a master's level in any given discipline or not. Because of what the path to mastery does to your life. So I found it quite a remarkable little book, and I wanted to share a few quotes and sections with you. Now, if you've seen the rest of my videos, I don't do clickbait. I'm not going to give you the 5 steps to become a master of anything. We're going to go deeply into this book, as we do into every other topic, or try to at any rate. And so we're gonna dive right in, and what I'll be doing is just reading some of the quotes and going into them. I'm gonna spend like 20 minutes, as I usually do, see how far we get, and make a few extra little videos if that's necessary. And so the first little quote that I wanted to read to you was features in the introduction of the book, and it says, "If there is any sure route to success and fulfillment in life, it is to be found in the long-term, essentially goal-less process of mastery." So, okay, so that's quite a big claim, right? So this is a sure route to success and fulfillment in life. But it also claims that it is a long-term and essentially goal-less process. So what the author claims as you go into the book is that what we have going on in our lives is this essential desire to grow and become fulfilled or self-realized, if you will, and that the one way to do that is to pick up something that is dear to us or with which we have affinity, and to pursue it with a huge amount of energy, dedication, and long-term commitment. And that unless we do that, we are in fact sort of flip-flopping around a little bit, and not, for some reason, life just doesn't feel good enough to us. We're just not engaged in something that is complicated and compelling enough, if you will, to drive us forward. Now, so that first phrase sort of sets up the framework for the book, and then I'm going to skip somewhere towards the end where a certain point is made that I think is interesting to mention up front, because it is something that I've often struggled with, and that is, how do you develop the energy and the drive to engage in something so consistently, in such a long-term type of way, and with a high degree of consistent energy? Okay, and so it says something really funny. I think there's something to be taken from this. It says, if you want to get something done, as says an old phrase, ask a busy person to do it. So let's dive into that, and I'm gonna read another little phrase which says that a human being is the kind of machine that wears out from lack of use. And so this is particularly interesting to me personally. It's so what's the cure for laziness, right? And I think that laziness is, it comes from a couple of things in my mind, and this is not by no means a psychological analysis, but I think it comes first of all from that part of us and the part of the human brain that is trying to save as much energy as possible. In other words, there's a part of us that knows that spending energy and making effort is costly, right? So it requires us to burn up calories that are perhaps, or used to be perhaps, expensive to acquire in our environment. And so you try to do as little as possible. You don't want to spend energy. So when a problem comes to you, you go, do I really have to deal with this? Okay. But the other one is more of a psychological bit, or maybe it could be a way to resolve it. And that is it's the misunderstanding that by doing less, your energy is somehow accumulated and now you can sort of hoard it, and there will come a point where all that energy is there when you really need it, and the great unveiling of your accumulated energy will be launched into the world at this amazing moment. We'll talk about amazing moments later, by the way, which is another huge point that the book makes. But the point at hand here is that it's precisely the opposite. Is that in order to have energy, you need to develop energetic momentum in your life, and that momentum makes it easier. You're in this ongoing flow. Things are coming to you, problems, situations, you resolve, you pick up the next thing, and you're moving, right? So there's this energetic flow in your life, and you keep feeding that, and it has a kind of snowball effect. I've seen that at work on some business leaders that I've seen in the past, and they have this enormous momentum. And you think, like, how the hell? I mean, you can barely keep up. And these are, in some cases, people that are way past retirement age, and they just wipe the floor with you because their momentum and their energy that they carry is humongous, right? So for them, a problem comes in, they sort it out, and they sort out 100 things in one day, while you're still fiddling around with a couple of them. And so that phrase of, if you want to get something done, assign it to someone who's busy, is a fantastic little phrase. I've seen it at work as well with people that I work with. The people who have the least amount of things to do tend to just get stuck in small things. They don't know how to make progress. You assign them just a couple of things, and it doesn't work out. Whereas the people who are up to their neck in work, you assign them to something, and they'll take it and they'll run with it. And I found that to be quite an interesting phrase, something to take to heart, and also something to consider as you are engaging in a path to mastery, because the energy and the drive to move forward when things are tough is gonna come in very handy, of course. So I thought that was something that was very very interesting to share with you guys. Okay, so here's another one, and this one is a bit more to do with let's say ego and more learning tactics, if you will. And in fact, I'll bundle it with point number 4 here in my little tabs. And so it says, you shouldn't start playing with winning as a major consideration until you have reasonable control. And so what is this about? I was listening to someone the other day teaching martial arts online, and they were talking about what they called investing in loss. And what they mean by that is that you need to take your ego and your desire to win and to dominate and to, essentially impose your betterness over others, or even to try and amaze yourself about how quickly you're winning at something. You need to be willing to take that, set it aside, in order to make place for practicing the method, and practicing the method very deeply, so that you become consistently good at it, as opposed to sacrificing the learning of the method in order to win. And so this particular teacher was emphasizing how the particular method that he teaches has to do with relaxation and softness. And he said, well, if while you're practicing with a partner, your ego gets a hold of you, what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to be acting really quick. So you're going to put speed into the equation, and that's going to help you win. Or you're going to put trickery into the equation, or you're going to try to use force. And all those things might get you the victory. And in fact, you could win every little battle through those little egoic uses of tactics in order to get away with stuff. But you are going to lose the war, ironically. And the reason for that is you're not investing in loss. You are losing the lesson, losing out on learning the method in order to win and prove a point. And so what this says is, well, how about you let go of this whole idea of winning, and you focus on learning the method, and you devote yourself to the process, right? And so what happens is you're delaying gratification, essentially. You're going into, oh man, I suck, and but eventually, it'll work, right? And it might not be as fun in the beginning. I remember, I've struggled for years now to learn Dutch. I've been living in Holland for over 12 years. And the reason I haven't done it is because I don't want to sacrifice a nice social interaction in order to push my learning forward. It's too high a price for me to pay, in my view. But what ends up happening is I just never learn, right? Or you can think of, imagine if a kid who's trying to learn how to walk would find his way to always sort of crawl next to walls and just, start running and walking faster than everybody else, but he does it while sort of leaning on a wall. 2 years later, his friends will be playing out on the playground. This guy will still be sort of leaning on a wall because he didn't dare to step out and take the necessary falls that happen over and over again for him to or her to stand on their own feet. And so, this we can think of 1,000 examples about this stuff, but ultimately it is the question is, what are you investing in? Are you investing on winning, or are you investing on learning the method? And sometimes you can call that investing on loss, but it is you're losing because you have a much greater goal in mind. So if you focus on the tiny goal of winning that particular little interaction or that little moment, that's one way to roll. But the other way to roll is to invest on something much greater that you're aiming for. And so if you have a great goal in mind, all these little wins that are short term, you're not going to be too bothered with those, of course. And then comes the next point, and to me this one is I have to say probably one of the most memorable things about the book is the one thing that I quote when I speak about this book, and it is what the author calls the mastery curve. And I can show you what that mastery curve looks like, which is there. And so you can see that it is some little peaks that occasionally happen upwards, but there are intervals where there's a lot of flat stuff going on, right? So that's progress, right? So you start to learn and you make this little peak, and then there seems to be this huge, long, flat bit where nothing seems to happen, and then you go up again, and so you go. So, and the phrase that talks about this one, or that summarizes it, it says, you also have to be willing to spend most of your time on a plateau to keep practicing even when you seem to be getting nowhere. Okay, and it says there is an apparent spurt of learning once a plateau is over, and suddenly you come to this jump, but the spurt is only apparent. So it says, but this learning has been going all along. Okay, so this is kind of a case against this expectation of this upward linear curve where you're learning, improving, and you're expected to go like this. But the path to mastery, according to George Leonard, is more like you have a long plateau, and then all of a sudden the realization comes, and you go boom, and you got this little uppy movement. And then you're once again sort of, maybe even go down a little bit, and you have another plateau, and then suddenly another realization happens, and then you go up again. So to me, this is really huge, actually, and I've experienced it myself back home when I was training triathlon, for example. I would notice that I would train a swimming drill for months without anything really happening, and I was like, this is supposed to be improving, right? Like my stroke is supposed to be better, or my swimming times are supposed to be better, but it's like, I do the drill on, and there's just like nothing's going on here. And all of a sudden, boom, the realization would come, and I would start, in my view, at any rate, flying, right? Like really cruising through the pool. And I was like, whoa, now I get it. It has finally landed. I was supposed to, place my hand this way, or, tilt a little bit more or whatever. And then suddenly the realization comes, and then you're at that level, right? And it takes a little bit of adjustment back and forth, but now it becomes established. And then you start to learn the next drill, and once again you're like, freaking hell, I thought I had learned how to learn, but it's like, once again, it's nothing. And so there's a point to be made about this, which is that in order for something to become truly part of your neurology, it has to be extensively practiced, right? For this to become second nature and just completely embedded in your neurology and in your muscle memory and so on, you just got to practice it a lot. And it is not until it is part of your muscle memory, it is not until it becomes second nature and you can do it truly without thinking, that then the benefit suddenly kicks in, and you're like, whoa, where did that come from? Well, it's you think, you're tempted to think, if only I had realized that I had just to do this and that, and what the hell? And you're like, well, sure, but the way to only realize it is to practice your butt off, and then the realization comes. I was listening also, what was it, yesterday, to a very good book by Shinsen Young called The Science of Enlightenment. And he was talking about how when highly trained or highly practiced meditation masters become enlightened, or taste the first levels of enlightenment, comes the realization that it was always within you and you didn't have to do anything at all. Well, yeah, right. It's like, that's what they call the enormous condescendence of retrospective, right? Or you look back and you go, if I known that all I had to do was recognize that my inner self, whatever, then I wouldn't have had to bother with 30,000 hours of meditation. Well, sure, but it is the 30,000 hours that took you to the realization that that's all it took, right? So there's a big point to be made about the plateau. And so listen to this. So how do you best move forward towards mastery? To put it simply, you practice diligently, but you practice primarily for the sake of the practice itself. And so what George Leonard is trying to tell us here is that the plateau, which is normally seen as an area in which you are stuck and out of which you want to get, is in fact the most valuable part of the mastery path. The little peak comes by, it just happens. You can't force it. It is an internal click that you can't force. But the plateau, the part where the grind, if you will, or the repetitive mindful practice takes place, that's where the path to mastery occurs, because of a couple of reasons. One, it is where your input takes place, and the input is the part that you can control. You can't control the output. That's why in yoga they say a lot, like the 8 limbs of the Ashtanga method, for example. They'll tell you, well, the first limbs, asana, pranayama, meditation, and the yanas and niyamas, so the observances. Those are elements that you can control. But then you have the internal part of the method, and I always forget what these are called. I think is dhyana. There's a 7th one, and there's samadhi, which is the enlightenment essentially, or realization, and those are internal ones. And there was this guy who essentially devised the Ashtanga, the modern Ashtanga yoga method, Patabi Joyce, and he says the internal ones you can control, and that's where your effort goes. But the external ones, but the internal ones, no control. And sometimes they call it, they are awarded to you by grace, right? Or it's like the gods of yoga look upon you with kindness and go, yeah, this one's ready. What it essentially means is you can't force, or you can't focus on achieving internal change at the level of mind, at the level of mind-body. What you can do is follow methods and consciously and diligently practice those methods, which have been shown to result in these internal realizations. And so, no matter what area of life you're looking at, whether it's yoga, art, even business, right? It's for things to click in your mind, you need to do a lot of life in that plateau. And but the other part that it says is that you're not supposed to just do it, but you're actually supposed to find enjoyment in it. And that's where what I mentioned at the start of this book being both a book that tells you how to achieve mastery, but also equally importantly, why. The funny thing is that for George Leonard, the achievement of mastery is fulfilling not at the end once you become a master, but in following the path to mastery, meaning enjoying the plateau, right? I don't think I bookmarked that little phrase in the book, but he does mention something around the lines of that people who enjoy life in the plateau find life particularly fulfilling, because most of life happens in the plateau. And even when you're not following a path to mastery, even when you're just like doing your thing and stuff, you're looking constantly forward to these big moments. But how many big moments do you really have in life? I mean, you can probably count them like in one hand, maybe two. And in the next video, I'll talk about the problem with chasing only big moments one after the next. So that's like things not to do. But what happens in practice is you have only a few of these, like, wow, noteworthy, whatever moments. The rest of it is just life happening, right? And the person who is in a path to mastery has found real fulfillment and true enjoyment in the practice for its own sake, and in these plateaus where nothing seems to be happening. The little ritual of putting their uniform on or entering the place where they practice and whatever has become this delicious repetitiveness, and within that apparent routine, because they're doing it in a highly mindful kind of way, new subtleties arise every single time, and they have found a lot of pleasure in that, and that makes their life fulfilled. And of course, once you do that and you stick to one discipline and you put your energy and your mindfulness into it for a long period of time, mastery comes as a result. Okay. So there we are. So that was 25 minutes already, and time flies when we are having fun, which I am. I'm having a lot of fun with this, and so I didn't reread the book for this video, but as you know, I have the habit of underlining parts of books that I find interesting, and so I did have the pleasure of looking at my underlinings as I prepare for this video, and I thought, man, I should read this book again. Actually, there's so much in here to go at. So I hope you enjoy that. I am definitely gonna make another video or two about this book because it's just packed with way too much knowledge for a single video, and which is cool. And it just says something about the author. Almost every page has something that is entertaining or let's say insightful. And I'm going to leave you with one last phrase for this one, and it makes a point about what we were just talking about that idea of returning to the place of practice every single day, and going in there and staying in that plateau because you enjoy it. And it says, the ritual that was always the same, yet always new. If you've ever experienced that, then you know what I'm talking about. I've experienced it in a few disciplines. The latest discipline that I took up was, or is Tai Chi, and I'm absolutely in love with it. But previously I was doing Ashtanga Yoga, and a lot of people that I spoke to thought like, so don't you find it boring to do the same sequence again? And my answer was, well, the sequence might be the same, but it's never the same experience. It's completely new and fresh, and my body is always doing new, interesting things. Sometimes I'm more flexible. You'll surprise yourself every now and then, and so I found reassurance in that sort of little repetitive ritual that I was doing, and yet it was never ever routine. So I hope to leave you with a little bit of extra interesting knowledge after this, and I'll be back for the next video, and see you guys soon. Cheers.